What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out over at patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. Also find this in podcast form wherever you get your podcast. Just search Packer Fan Total Access. We got a bit of breaking news here on February 14th. That's right. We're risking the marriage to jump on here and get you guys this video as there's some stuff that's kind of developing behind the scenes. We'll see what happens and what comes of it. Hopefully, DeMarcus Covington stays put. But the late breaking news is it looks like another Packers coach could be potentially being poached from this staff. Obviously, another member of Jeff Hafley's defensive staff from the previous year before. He's a guy we got from the Patriots. We'll talk about what the rumors are. We'll dive into all that. We'll also talk about a potential replacement for him if indeed he does end up leaving the Packers. And we got a couple of different candidates that really come to mind. Like I said, we'll dive into those just a little bit. Before we do, if you would do that YouTube stuff for me, hit like, hit subscribe. If this is your first time tuning into a PTA breaking news segment, we're not experts. We're not insiders. We're not media members. We're fans like you talking Packers on a daily basis, covering the breaking news as it happens throughout social media and across all other platforms. So if you're looking for that type of content, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, click the bell icon for us as well. Let's get into it here. So DeMarcus Covington, all right, is rumored to being interviewed with the Las Vegas Raiders. All right. Good to see you in here, Coach. Appreciate you swinging through, buddy. Here's what Ian Rapoport tweeted out first. The Raiders are interviewing Packers defensive line coach and run game coordinator DeMarcus Covington for their vacant defensive coordinator job per the insiders. Covington was the Patriots defensive coordinator in 2024 before moving to Green Bay. Now, keep in mind, guys, some are going, why so late? Why are they waiting so late? Well, they just got Clint Kubiak in-house, right? They had to wait for the Seahawks season to wrap up. Obviously, Clint Kubiak was the offensive coordinator and play caller for the Seattle Seahawks, so he's taken over with the Raiders, so now he's putting his staff together. So some people will look at this like, oh, it's so late in the game, they don't really want him. Others are looking at it like the fact that they took the time to interview this guy, this might be their top choice, right? And I haven't been keeping up with all the different candidates that are interviewing there with the Raiders, but you guys do your own research there. Again, I would have to imagine that DeMarcus Covington is probably in their top three, at least the fact that they are having him come in for an interview right now. Jason Wilde sent a tweet out. You know, he covers the Packers, been covering the Packers for quite some time now. He threw this out, quote tweeting Ian Rapoport, and said Covington is the last primary position coach from Jeff Hafley's 2025 defensive staff who's still with the Packers. And obviously there's still some assistants there, but like he's saying, the primary, right? Primary position coach. And it says linebackers coach Sean Duggan. He obviously went to the Miami Dolphins with Jeff Hafley. Defensive backs coach Ryan Downard went with Jeff Hafley to the Miami Dolphins. Pass game coordinator Derek Ansley left when we hired Bobby Babich. So Ansley ends up in Dallas with the Cowboys. And then quality control coach Wendell Davis also went to the Miami Dolphins. If you guys remember, Wendell Davis was the ball king, all that buzz that never really amounted to anything, I guess you could say, is a nice way of putting it. Last year when we were talking about the ball king, we're going to take the ball away, and that kind of fell flat, obviously, with the lack of turnovers forced by this defense last year. They have all departed for new jobs. So Jason Wilde pointing out a very, very important part here that, man, how many of these position coaches are actually remaining, right? I think Matt LaFleur would love to keep DeMarcus Covington in-house. Will he be able to? Time will tell. How well will he interview for that job as DC with the Raiders? You know, when you look at some of the numbers, I can't imagine that they're like over the moon. Wow, the Packers defense really wowed us. We need to go get their defensive line coach. And the reason being is the sack percentage was down. The run defense was just outside of the top 10, so they played pretty decent. Now, on the other hand, we were banged up, so maybe they're taking that into consideration as well. If injuries had not decimated this defense, you know, especially with Micah Parsons going out, Devonte Wyatt in the middle going out, those are arguably the two most important pieces to our defensive front. Maybe the numbers would have been better, right? But again, just kind of looking at it from all angles here. Now, you're probably asking yourself, who could be the next man up, right? Who could that be? On the staff still is assistant defensive line coach Vince Ogabasi, all right? So you'd like to think that he would have a fair shake at potentially getting the defensive line / run game coordinator spot, unless maybe Matt LaFleur wants to go in a different direction, or maybe Jonathan Gannon wants to go in a different direction. But let's back up a touch. What if DeMarcus Covington does get the DC job with the Raiders? Who do you think would be his top choice for defensive line coach? Probably going to be Vince Ogabasi, right? I imagine. I mean, they worked together, although he didn't handpick him. That was more of a Jeff Hafley pick. If you guys remember Coach O, Vince Ogabasi, he came from Boston College with Jeff Hafley. Of all the people that Jeff Hafley was going to take to Miami with him, I would have imagined it would have been Vince Ogabasi because he's kind of followed them everywhere they've gone, right? And that wasn't the case. So, and here's the other thing. If they do offer the defensive line coaching position and run game coordinator position to Vince Ogabasi, if Covington does leave for the Raiders, I think Matt LaFleur could technically block that and say, well, which would you rather do? Would you rather be our defensive line coach and run game coordinator, or would you rather go to the Raiders? Now, he can block that lateral move, right? However, Matt has not done that in the past. He didn't even do that with the Jeff Hafley stuff, from what I imagine, right? So he is notorious for, hey, I don't want to hold anybody else out of an opportunity that might potentially further their coaching career. I respect that about Matt LaFleur, and I know there's some fans that disagree with that. We can just agree to disagree. I think it's the proper way of handling that situation rather than trying to keep someone in-house that doesn't want to be there. They feel like there's a better opportunity for them somewhere else. Keeping someone who's unconvinced, they're still not convinced, right? Like, why would you want someone on staff who deep down inside, man, they really wanted to go somewhere else? I don't know. I would, as I think it was Mike Tomlin said years ago, we want volunteers, right? We don't want hostages. So Vince O, we'll see what happens there. Now, if Vince O does go to the Raiders, right? Or if Jonathan Gannon has something else in mind in terms of replacing DeMarcus Covington, if DeMarcus Covington gets the job, again, guys, this is breaking news from a sense of they are interviewing him. So we got to kind of be on watch there. All right. He's not been hired yet. Now, if Vince Ogabasi were to go with him to the Raiders, or the Packers decided he ain't the guy, who would Gannon's potential replacement be? Let me throw a name out here, and I'm going to try not to butcher the name, okay? Winston Delati-Bauder. I think I'm saying that right. Or maybe it's Bo. Delati-Bauder. Okay, yeah. We're going to call him Winston, Coach Winston. Of course, there was another Winston on staff last year, so that sucks, right? Is currently the defensive line coach for Michigan State University, having been officially named to the position on January 5th, 2026. He joined the Spartans under new head coach Pat Fitzgerald following a season in the NFL with the Arizona Cardinals, all right? And that came from the Michigan State University Athletics website, all right? So he is now with the Michigan State University, what is that, the Spartans, I believe? So he's the defensive line coach there, and you're going, well, Clayton, why are you mentioning him? Because he was on the Arizona Cardinals staff for Jonathan Gannon. He was his defensive line coach. It's obvious that was his top choice to be his defensive line coach in his most recent stint. Does that mean he'll bring him to Green Bay? No, it doesn't. However, he's got to be there toward the top of the list in terms of candidates that might be on Jonathan Gannon's radar, unless Matt LaFleur just wants to say, no, I would rather keep Coach O, or I would rather go get this guy instead. Maybe they poach another staff that's been kind of plucked apart as well, right? So again, just looking at his coaching career and who Coach Winston is, I want to say it again. Delati-Bauder, all right? Delati-Bauder. We're going to learn this. I kind of hope he doesn't get the job now because I don't want to have to learn it. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. Here's his coaching career history listed below in chronological order. So he started in Charlotte in 2020, began his career as a graduate assistant working with the defensive line. He then moved on to Oregon in 2021, served as a graduate assistant there, notably mentoring future first-round NFL draft pick Kayvon Thibodeau. So he was working hand in hand, right, firsthand with Kayvon Thibodeau, who ended up being, I think, like a top 5 pick, if I remember correctly. He was definitely top 10 who went to the Giants. Now, whether you think Thibodeau is a great player or not, we can all agree his draft stock was through the roof. He was a freak of nature in college. That was all in part to the coaching from Coach Winston here, right? Now, he went on to Akron in 2022. He was hired for his first full-time role as a defensive line coach there. And then immediately he goes to Minnesota, all right? He goes to Minnesota for 23 and 24, returned to his alma mater as defensive line coach and newcomer coordinator, all right? That was on February 2nd, 2024. He was promoted to the assistant head coach position as well. So you see this rapid ascension since he got into coaching in 2020. He's got a promotion pretty much everywhere he's gone, right? So he's obviously impressing a lot of coaches along the way. That's when the NFL came calling. The Arizona Cardinals in 2025, he transitioned to the NFL as a defensive line coach under head coach Jonathan Gannon. So Jonathan Gannon decided, hey, this is the guy we want to have on staff to be our defensive line coach, right? Now, obviously, Jonathan Gannon gets fired as the head coach. That whole coaching staff gets plucked apart, and Michigan State came calling. Okay, so Michigan State hired him. He returned to the college ranks to serve as defensive line coach with Michigan State University. Multiple sources there. Obviously, that's who he's on staff with. Now, you may be going, hold up, Clayton, hold up. He's already got a job at Michigan State. We can't go get him. Wrong. Think about what just happened with Noah Pauley. Noah Pauley is Christian Watson's former wide receiver coach at North Dakota State. He gets a job at Iowa State. He coaches up Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, and everybody was like, wow, this dude is the quintessential up-and-coming wide receiver coach / offensive coordinator, offensive mind, right? So Penn State came calling and hired him there, right? So he goes from Iowa State to Penn State, and then even though he took that job with Penn State, the Packers came calling. It's obvious that Noah Pauley wanted to get into the NFL, so he comes and he's now the new wide receiver coach for the Green Bay Packers. I say all that because the similar thing could possibly happen to Coach Winston here. All right, if that ends up happening, then maybe he'll end up being our defensive line coach again. This all stemming from if DeMarcus Covington ends up going to the Raiders. If Covington doesn't get the job with the Raiders, I really have a hard time believing they will look to replace him, or else they would have already did so. So it's obvious that's the guy they wanted to keep, one of the guys that they wanted to keep on staff. That's one that that Jeff Hafley was not able to poach away from the Packers. He had to kind of decide who's going to be my DC, because if I do go hire Coach Covington, it's got to be a promotion, most likely, right? Or at least it's got to be worth it for him in that regard. So again, that's why we're coming up with those ties. Now, during his coaching career, Coach Winston, he also completed the Bill Walsh Diversity Coaching Fellowship, same thing that Noah Pauley did, with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 22 and then the Packers in 23. So he's already been in one of Matt LaFleur's kind of camps, if you will, right? He entered that program, that coaching fellowship program, the diversity program. So he's already been in Green Bay for a short time. So Matt LaFleur's already familiar with him. There's a little bit of another reason there, a little bit more depth to why he may potentially come to Green Bay. Now, I'm not saying this is a slam dunk move. This is kind of the numbers don't mean everything, right? You got to factor in injuries. You got to factor in opponent. Yeah, there's a lot of things you got to factor in. Okay. So hear me out. But to pretend like Green Bay's pass rush was just unbelievable last year, their sack percentage was 5.84% last year. Okay. 5.84%. That was tied for 26th best in the league last year. And you're probably going, how did that happen when Micah Parsons had 12.5 sacks? Outside of Micah Parsons and Rashan Gary 7.5, they didn't hit home very often, right? Which kind of leads credence to why I think we probably want to bring Gary back another year if we can get him on a cheaper deal, right? Again, we're not going to pay him what he's on the hook for, but if you remove Gary from that equation, the sacks go down even more. Well, what if the guys behind him get more sacks? It's possible, but Gary led them in pressure percentage at 12.5%, according to NFL Pro. So again, all these things come into factor. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what about Arizona? Since we got Jonathan Gannon coming in, what was the sack percentage down there? It was even lower at 4.98%. So to say, yeah, Green Bay's sack percentage wasn't where it needed to be last year. And listen, sack percentage isn't everything. There's other aspects of the defense that I feel like are probably more important. But with all that being said, you'd say, okay, well, Green Bay wasn't that great. Arizona's was even worse. So now we're talking about potentially replacing Covington if he gets the job with the Raiders with a defensive line coach that had even less success at getting to the quarterback in Arizona in 2025. Again, personnel, all these things come into play. It all matters. Me personally, if it was up to me, I would like to see them go outside of both of these candidates and try to shore up the defensive line. Now, I like Covington. I think those numbers are a little bit skewed with the injuries and whatnot there in Green Bay. And also, it's not the only thing. You look at the run defense, right? How was our run defense? We ended up finishing 11th, tied for 11th at 4.2 yards per rush allowed, okay? So we were pretty darn good even with the injuries at run defense. Maybe that's why it's like, okay, DeMarcus Covington is the guy moving forward. Now, how did Arizona fare against the run last year? They were tied for 19th at 4.4 yards per rush allowed. Okay, so when you look at Coach Winston and what he did with Arizona's defensive line, just kind of globally speaking, it was a little bit worse than what we was, significantly worse than what we did. I know it's only 0.2 of a yard, but you guys know how that goes, man. The difference between 0.2 of a yard and it'll get you from what, that spot where you're essentially right on the cusp of being the 25th worst defense or best defense in the league, I should say, as opposed to the 11th, right? So it does matter. I mean, it is a per snap basis type thing, per attempt basis type thing. So again, I would like to see them, like, what if you could go poach somebody for a defensive line coach if Covington gets a job somewhere else? What if you went somewhere like Indianapolis, who had the second best run defense. Maybe get a young, good mind out of there, right? Maybe Jacksonville, maybe, even Vegas had a significantly better run defense, right? So maybe there's an option where you can go and get someone a little bit better if Covington does leave. And also when you talk about sack percentage, maybe you can get somebody that's in the top 10. We don't have that list here, but what's crazy too is like sack percentage in San Francisco. As soon as they lost Bosa, they finished dead last at 3.49%. Isn't it wild? The Packers were 26th in sack percentage. San Francisco was 32nd. And they both made the playoffs. Pretty wild statistic there. So, again, that's your breaking news. That's just a quick update of what's going on with the coaching staff. Keep an eye on DeMarcus Covington and see if he gets the job with the Raiders. If he does, who are we going to replace him with? I'm curious to know what everybody's thoughts are in the comments. Let us know if you're watching this back later. Which one would you rather have? What coach do you want on staff to lead the defensive line room? Are you okay with Coach Winston coming in from Michigan State, go poach him from there? If Covington leaves, are you okay with keeping Covington if he doesn't take the job? Let us know in the comments what you think. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, click the bell icon so you don't miss out on future live streams. I'm going to get out of here, go save my marriage because it's Valentine's Day. Everybody in the comments, thank y'all for jumping in here. Hit that like button for us, all right? My name's Clayton. This is PTA. Go Pack, go.
Here we go.
Bye, guys.